Rawr.
I'm angry about cats.
When did we all get this dumb? Almost only counts in horseshoes, hand grenades, and nuclear warfare. I don't see any bodies, so it doesn't count.
I'm angry about cats.
I'm the chef. I want to hear one thing. Yes, chef.
Come on, man. Use your brain.
The Why I'm Angry podcast starts now. All right, guys, it's the Why I'm Angry podcast. This is the chef here in the Freestyle Man Cave studio here in northern Dayton. And just wanted to get on here and get a podcast going. We're going to talk later on about Charlie Kirk and some of the conspiracies that have jumped up. I've got a talk with Jay Boots. And for now, I've got you guys, we're going to talk about this Snap debacle. And, just kind of let's get to thinking for ourselves about what is the issue, who's actually doing this, and not just look at all the headlines. But I want to get to the headlines right off the bat because it's kind of funny to see, what is going on, who they say is the problem. I like how it says Senate Republicans strike down Democratic proposal to fully fund SNAP. When SNAP benefits will arrive is still in flux. Here's what the communities are doing. Trump threatens to withhold SNAP benefits. That's from the New York Times until the government is back up and running. Hakeem Jeffries digs in on the SNAP blame game with 42 million Americans' food in jeopardy. Blue states blame Republicans for looming SNAP shutoff. Trump administration must pay SNAP food benefits. That's from the BBC. And like that's, some of this stuff is, we heard on Friday that a court got together and made a ruling that the SNAP benefits would have to be paid out of the contingency. Part of that, and that sounds, they saved us. Trump can't hold these SNAP things, or the government can't hold the SNAP benefits, hostage. But honestly, the contingency is not that much, and so they can't pay a large amount of what's going on. They can't pay a ton of what actually is needed to be paid. So I went on and I just to see, what's the deal? Is this a big part of the community? Is this something, obviously, these kind of programs help people I know and help people that really need it. And yes, I can make a joke, or I can say something like, these people, they should work harder, or they should do this, or you can do whatever you want, joking wise. But there, the roughly maybe 10%, or even if it's 20% of people who are abusing these benefits are the minority, and we don't care about them. We would like to get rid of them so that we're not spending the money on them. 10% is a pretty good amount, especially when you get into the millions and billions of people. If it does say that about 42 million people each month get these benefits, and it's kind of sad when you think that this is November, and we should be thinking about Thanksgiving. We should be thinking about how we can, pay it forward, how we've had a blessed year, how all of these things, the abundance of our year is waning down. We're getting ready for Christmas, and Thanksgiving is just a good time to thank God for the harvest. Thank God for for everything he's just given you throughout the year, whether you're a farmer or you work in a big shiny glass office building and you couldn't get anywhere, you're nowhere near a farm field or a cornfield, that, Thanksgiving is Thanksgiving no matter what. And so, this should be a time of getting ready for Thanksgiving. And there are people, roughly 42 million people. If you want to take those 10 or 15 or 20% out, somewhere in the high 30s of 30 million people who really need this and who either can't work. And I got the percentages of what, it's 39% is kids. And that would mean that roughly about 15 to, somewhere in there around 20 million of these people are kids. 20% is over 60, so about 9 million people are over 60. You got disabled people, about 9%, so and about 4.5 million are disabled under 60. You got 7 million are full-time caregivers, or 7%, which is close to about 6 to 7 million are full-time caregivers. Other exempt from work requirements, meaning they're either disabled or they're not, maybe they weren't fully developed, maybe they have some kind of developmental issues. That's another 9%. You've got 5% of full-time employed people. These are people who are working a full-time job and just can't make ends meet, which honestly, with the poverty line around the 50,000 mark, that's a lot of people that, work a full-time job and just can't make the ends meet and need that little bit of help. And maybe this little bit of help isn't even their full deal, which I can see. And you got 13% other adults. And I think that those 13% other adults, some of them are like I said, it doesn't say disabled. It doesn't say any, maybe they came back, and they have PTSD. And so they work, but they can't work full time, or there's something that's just not, something in their life is not jiving. Maybe they're maybe they've been let go of their job. They don't have a job, and they're right now they're in between jobs. People come into and out of the food stamps or the SNAP program all the time because they need it for a short time and they get better. And honestly, that's the program itself. That's its main function. Yes, it does. It helps these children. It helps the disabled or the over 60. But this was supposed to be a supplemental program to kind of help people who need it in a time of need, in a short amount of time and stuff like that. But it's become something that is helping people beyond that a lot more. It says households under the poverty line, you got about 20 in 50. And those are the ones that use SNAP. Some of the people under the poverty line still don't use SNAP. So it's not everybody. There are way more people than 42 million people under the poverty line. Households where somebody is disabled, you got about 10 in 50 that are on SNAP or have someone in the household disabled. Households with children, 9 in 50. You got black households are 12. Native American households are 11 in 50. Hispanic households are 9 in 50. Asian households are 5 in 50. Non-Hispanic households, white households are 4 in 50. I mean, this is a lot of people who are of all kinds of different descents. It's not, yes, you can see black households are 12 in 50. They are 3 times more than white households. But this isn't a white and black thing. This is a people thing. These are people who need assistance. You can say Native Americans, which 11 in 50 Native American households, like that's substantial because Native Americans are only 1.2% of the population. And so for them to be 11 in 50 households, that's a big amount of people. You know, so and you go to the 4 and 50 because the white population is 60% of the population right now, or maybe it's 54. It's still more than 50%. That's still as many or double the amount of black population that's on food stamps. And so like I said, it's really just not a it's not a racial thing. It's about people who need these food stamps or the SNAP program, and it's just it goes beyond that. And so I wanted to get on and kind of just I wanted to hit the numbers. I wanted to kind of start hitting the who's to blame, you know, and then what do we what do we get out of it? What's the deal here? And so it's funny to see, all of the updates and stuff like that about who's to blame and what's going on and all of that. But then to actually read the numbers. And so they're excited about this judge that has said, no, Trump, you can't withhold the SNAP program. Well, at the same point, he's not really holding back the SNAP program as much as the budget is holding back the SNAP program. The budget itself is about $4.6 billion is what they have in a contingency. Let me make sure $4.65 billion in a contingency program fund. And so 2 federal judges have ordered the administration to take that contingency fund and pay out SNAP. SNAP's monthly payout is a little over $9 billion. So even though that the judge said pay them their stuff out of this contingency plan, once this contingency plan's gone, what's next? 40 million recipients at $9 billion. This per household is it. I worked it up. I went and looked it up. They get about $180 to $190 per person. I mean, that's not even $40 a month or a week per person to eat off of. So this is really 100% a supplemental program. I mean, unless you're buying, unless you're a college student or you're trying to be like a college student and you're just buying a lot of ramen noodles, and then you probably are okay through the month. But so this month they're going to get somewhere around, I'm sure there's some administrative costs and things like that. And so they're going to get somewhere around $70 to $100 for the month. What happens at Christmas? Like, what happens at Christmas time when they still haven't signed a budget? Because from what I'm seeing, neither side will budge. And the one side just continues to get more and more out there with their demands. I mean, they're filibustering the budget. It's got to be signed someday, or there isn't a budget. Like, there isn't money. Then the money doesn't get distributed. It's like a business. If you don't set a budget and pay your bills like you're supposed to, and you just go paying it willy-nilly, then you don't pay attention to where things are. At the end of the month, the year, 3 months from now, the quarter, you're going to either run out of money, or you're going to have money that's sitting there inefficiently. And in this country, the way we spend money for things, like millions of dollars for, LGBTQ dance lessons, and, how to educate men on having babies with men in Ecuador or wherever that was. And with those things, we're just in the previous administration, we were just spending that money. And what's sad about it is, it would be sad if it was just going to that kind of a thing. But I have every belief that it wasn't going to those kind of things. It was going to pay off people for their expertise in things. Different favors that have been done to advance a pandemic, to advance an elderly gentleman who should have never been elected because he wasn't fit to run to begin with. And he wasn't fit not just to run, but to run the country. Like, you didn't just, he was never in the public. Why do other countries think we're so weak, or that Trump is so crazy? Because he's actually doing his job as a president. Now, he is a way more accessible president. He's on TV, he's on doing interviews and things like that way more often than you can say about 95 to 100% of other presidents. Like, he is way more out there. He's done way more public speaking. He doesn't. What's amazing about the way he public speaks is that he doesn't normally have cue cards or a list of things that he wants to talk about, or things like that, sitting in front of him. It's normally, he's answering questions from the media at the Oval Office. He's, doing all kinds of things that most of the presidents have not been doing. And he's just as old as any of them. At the end of his term, he'll be in his 80s. And, as much as people are like, yeah, run him again. No, he's in his 80s. Let him go retire. Let him have 10 years of just grandkid time or whatever. Let him hang out with Barron. The whole deal. But at the same point, we're spending our money without a budget now on just the essentials. And I know that this is not popular, but the essentials are, keep everybody's lights and heat on. Make sure the infrastructure of the country, because it's owned by the government, unfortunately, make sure it's on. Make sure that the borders are secure and safe. And make sure that the military is funded so that we're safe and secure from other countries in other parts of the world. And as sad as it is, that's what the government is supposed to be doing, making sure we have police so that people aren't looting and rioting, and making sure that the government, that the military and that is keeping us safe. That's that's the job of the government. And if we could strip it down to that every day, and we can put this billions and billions of dollars into local hands, local food banks, local whatever. You don't think a local food bank with $1 billion or $1 million is going to more efficiently buy and stock and hand out the food than the government is with a debit card handing out $200 a month. It's sad that a government that can bring in billions and billions of dollars, that we're gonna spend, $1.37 trillion on making sure that illegal immigrants get insurance. People who came in here breaking the law, and there are some great, super kind, super nice illegal immigrants. People who go to school, people who work in landscaping and banks and whatever else. I mean, just the nicest people you could meet. Construction, just anything that they can get into and make good money, they'll do. And there are some great people. But at the end of the day, they didn't or weren't able to come into the country legally. And so they made a choice to come in illegally. And in that case, if they're here illegally, there shouldn't be handouts. Like, you're here illegally. Do what you can, but if the law is the law, there isn't a handout to give you. Or if that handout is there to give you, it should first go to our people. $1.3 trillion can do a heck of a lot more than, $4.5 billion. You're talking about funding the SNAP program for 10 months. At least, without doing the math right off the top of my head, you're talking about, $4 billion for 10 months. That's only 40 billion. So at 40 billion, you're almost looking at 100 months is 400 billion. I don't know if you know this, but 100 months gets you past 5 years. The money that we're going to spend on people who lied and cheated and got to this country illegally, we won't spend on our people who are needing food. So if we could raise $1.3 trillion for people that needed it, if we could raise that money for those people, and we could then distribute it out, say that 1.3 trillion, instead of trying to keep it at the level it's at right now, and we extrapolate that out to 60 months. I did that wrong here, but we extrapolate that out to 60 months, which is 5 years. And obviously, if we have that money to for 1 year or for the next 4 years to help them with their health care, then we can build that same amount of money up every year or every 5 years. So I've got 1.3 trillion billion. One more set of zeros, guys. Yep. And we're going to divide that by 60 months. We would have we would have 100. We'd have about $200 billion per month. No, we'd have about $20 billion per month. 20 million, billion. Divide that by 41 million people. My calculator does not want to do that. We're gonna pay people. So yeah, 200 billion between 40 million people. You're talking about thousands of dollars a month instead of hundreds of dollars a month. You're talking about $1,500 or $2,000 a month instead of $180 a month. You're talking about giving those people, you would be able to give those people, they say the average family gets about $350,000 or $350 per month, household wise. So you're talking about, $75, $80 per week for a household, which an average household is, 3.5, 4.5 people in it. I don't know if you've been out to the grocery lately, but, we just spent $140 on groceries, and that got us to Thursday from Monday. There was a couple added things to it, but that's 4 days of the week. And we do buy, because I'm the chef and I can cook certain kinds of foods and different kinds of things, and we try to eat healthier and things of that nature. Yeah, we spend a little bit more money on our groceries. We buy some organic items and some things that we feel like are cleaner. I think it's more than organic, really. It's more just trying to keep the chemicals and the other things out. And so we do buy some of that stuff that's a little more expensive because it's processed naturally, which makes zero sense, but that's for another podcast. And so we could give the average person about $1,000 to $2,000, let alone, trying to give the average family. I mean, right now, this says the average family gets about $400, but the average household gets about $350. So, the average household is a lot smaller than the average family. But at the same point, that's still not that much. So just this part of it, this is the juxtaposition you're in is, who's to blame? Get in there and figure it out. Go in and figure out who do we blame here? Who, Is it the Republicans holding us back? Is it the Democrats who want to, are asking for exorbitant amounts to get us there? I my leanings is that the Republicans at one point had a plan that gave the government current running budget. The budget that we were already on, we were already doing, that we were already holding, and it held us going. It kept us going for another couple months. And with that being said, they decided, the Democrats at that point said they wanted $1.37 trillion to run the government, to give the government the same footing as it was, but to bring back a lot of the big beautiful bill things, and also so that they could make sure that there was health care for people who came into the country illegally. So that's where we sit on this, is that we could have had this going. The SNAP program wouldn't be done, because we would have collected the taxes, we would have collected the tariffs, we would have collected the whatever, to continue funding it at its level right then. And maybe when this is all done, SNAP gets a boost. It gets gets more funding. But we've wasted 3 months of not funding it. It no longer has any extra. So there isn't, so we don't. So we're in a pickle. We're in an issue. So you also hear that Congress hasn't worked very much during the shutdown. I saw a person that I follow on Facebook, one of my good friends' parents, had posted that Congress has worked maybe a month, 4 weeks or so since the shutdown. And it says, you go on and just start checking whether that's real. Both houses and Senate have been actively holding votes on various funding measures and continuing resolutions, which is what I was talking about, the continuing resolution to continue funding the government at previous Biden era levels. As of November 4th, 2025, the Senate has held 14 failed votes to advance a House-backed measure. So there's, they've done 14. There's at least 2 weeks of work there if they voted every day, which they didn't. And maybe they voted a couple times a day on some of these. So maybe it averages out. But Congress is actively in session and working, primarily focused on ending the funding impasse while continuing to receive their compensation. They're being paid. but they're also working. They're in Congress right now, and they're in session. We'll talk a little bit later in the podcast about how AI and this is also part of coming in from the AI deal that says they're being paid while they're being compensated, but nobody in the government that isn't you know well, I can't say nobody, but from what I see, they are funding the military for now as much as they can, and hopefully nobody is working and not getting paid. If you're furloughed and you're not getting paid, super tough time to be. But at the same point, hopefully you get some back pay or you get some monies back for not being paid to not work. It just seems like that's the only fair way to do it. But so could the situation be better? Yes. Could the SNAP program be funded? I don't know. I don't know what they did to only have $4.5 billion in a contingency for it. I don't know what that contingency was. Maybe that contingency was for Planned Parenthood or was for whatever else, and they've taken that money and said we need it for this. Maybe that's what's left after whatever else, because honestly, the SNAP program is no longer got funding. It doesn't have the money in the account to pay out. So they're taking this money from somewhere else. And with that, that's that. It doesn't have the funding. They're taking it from somewhere. It's a contingency fund. So hopefully that gets you to where you want to go. But it doesn't. It only pays about half. So people who would normally use some of this money to supplement getting ready for Thanksgiving, they're going to have to make some decisions. And I saw on there is tough decisions on whether to skimp on medications, whether to, go or not go to the doctor because of, because your child is sick, because you don't have the extra money to pay the copays or whatever. At the same time, if the government wasn't charging you thousands and thousands of dollars to pay for insurance, then you may have the money to spend on going to the doctor. You may have the money to spend on SNAP. If we weren't paying somewhere in the range of 25 to 40% taxes on the money we make, and then paying 7 or 8% tax or up to 12% tax on the items that we buy with that money that we just got taxed on, then we might have a few extra dollars that the SNAP program wouldn't have to be there. Or the SNAP program would actually be a supplement just to help some people out. Get a steak once in a while. Grab some cheeseburgers. Have a barbecue. But we're being taxed at a level that, if you think about it, in California, most people are getting taxed somewhere around 35 to 40%. And your state's going out of business. And you got to have the highest amount of income in the country to live there. And if you looked at this, we're bawling and whining about these tariffs, but we're not paying the tariffs. Yes, it comes into the items and stuff like that, and that's fine. But you're still paying for the taxes that they pay. A company, they'll pay you $90,000 a year. Say they pay you $50,000 a year, and they take 25% of that. That's $12,500 right there. But because they had to pay taxes on you, they have to take that, they have to put that into the product that you're making. They could pay you $50,000 a year and not take taxes out, and then you get that $12,000 extra. And the government gets its money from tariffs, a usage tax, and that usage tax could go to 20%, and you decide to pay it. Whether you're rich, whether you're poor, whether you're drunk, whether you're sober, whether you're white, black, pink, purple, yellow, green, whatever. You decide to pay that tax because you decide to consume something. And they could continue to, take groceries and water out of those taxes. And you want to, and everybody wants to complain. Well, our stuff would go up. Okay. So that $12,000, I could decide whether I want to buy a $25 t-shirt as opposed to not having the $12,000, $12,500, and buying a $20 t-shirt. And still paying 7 or 8, 12% tax on it. I mean, this isn't even part of what I was talking about, but this is part of what I'm talking about. This is government inefficiency. This is the reason why you don't want your government to run your life. This is why you don't want your federal government to give out your food stamps, your SNAP program. Because at the end of the day, it's money in an account. You are money in an account. And sad as that is, that's where you're at. But you don't see the local food bank saying, well, because of the government funding and shutdowns and stuff, they just give you what they can. Some months they give you more. And you'll see, because of Thanksgiving and Christmas, you'll see giving go up. You'll see, philanthropy go up. And you'll see they'll be able to give out more. Because they care about you. Because that money isn't for them, it's for you. The money that they get for the food is for the food for you. Federal government, the money they get is to continue to get you to vote for them. It's to keep their job. Because they don't care about you. They care about the votes. They care about the money in their pocket. People at the food banks, they don't care about the money in their pocket. That's why they're at a food bank working. They're not trying to, jump the corporate ladder. And if they are, they're jumping the corporate ladder somewhere else, not at the food bank. These government officials are jumping the corporate ladder at the food bank, making the money off of the food bank, off of you. And you're just sitting there going, but I didn't get my SNAP benefits. Well, hold them to the fire. This is voting day. This is the first Tuesday in November. In Ohio, that's voting day. And if you're not going out and voting, especially next year in November for the midterm elections, and you're not holding your representatives' feet to the fire, that means if it's a Republican and you got government shut down on, and that person wasn't voting the way you believe they should vote, primary them out. Vote against them. Bring in some Democrat if you need to. If you're in a Democratic state, a Democratic area, and the government's being shut down and you believe the government, that the Democrats are the problem, Vote them out. That's it. It's hard. It's hateful to say, and it's sad to say, but the government is the issue because they're doing more than they should be. Because you've given them the power to do more than they should be. It's not the fact that the government's the issue. It's that the fact that the government says, I'd like a little more power, and you say, okay. You don't sit back and think about whether that government power needs to be given to them or who it should be given to. You just think, I want the handout. I want what they're given. And I can't afford it myself. So just give it to me. And when you do that, it's good for now. But what happens in 2025 of November, and they don't have any more money to give you, and you've now become dependent on that program. What happens in 2040 when the money you have in your pocket is no longer money that's valuable, no longer has any value to it because we've moved to a digital currency. And because we've moved to a digital currency, all currency is now centralized and funded by the U.S. government. Right now, and I know I've said it, right now the government does not have centralized control of the digital currency. Right now, you take a debit card and you go and pay for something, it's guaranteed by the bank that you have your money in. Because the government has printed out all of this real cash, this money that backs up all of those dollars that are on your registry. And all of that is real and is controlled by whoever you've given it to, whether it's Chase or WAMU or Wells Fargo or TD Ameritrade. It's all backed by those guys. Those guys guarantee by the confidence that you have in them, by the FDIC, by FINRA, whatever. That money has money that you can physically hold that's controlled by them. But when it's not, when there is no physical money anymore, then the government controls it. Like there's, and you don't think that the government makes all this money on digital currency, sets it up, puts it out there, and in 3 or 4 years they see we can control things by shutting off the currency. There's no longer guy robs a bank, gets away with it, goes out into the desert, buries it, and 40 years later they let him go, and he goes out and gets his money because he's done his time. Whether that's legal or whether it should be okay or not, that's not the point. It's the same thing about what happens if you get in a car accident, you kill 3 people, and the government says, I need all of that money to pay for those lives that you took. And so now your family has no leg to stand on because your money didn't pay for those lives, and so they took your family's money too because they could. So now your whole family has been taken out by your one decision or by somebody's decision in the family. Not saying they have to do that or that they're going to do that soon, but you can see it. It can happen easy. Eminent domain shows that. They take feet and inches of people's property every day for roads. And if your house or your property lines up too close to the highway and they need a junction to get, to make it smoother, they can just take your property right there and, or cut your property in half with a road and say, eminent domain, we needed it for the better good, the greater good of humanity, of the people in your community. And that's it. And so, as silly as this is, I'm going to again go on here and say, this is enough for a podcast. So we're gonna write this off as a podcast. But we'll get to the Charlie Kirk stuff in the next podcast, and I'll open one up here this week, a second one, and I'll give you an intro, and you'll get to hear the whole Charlie Kirk podcast. But as for now, I think that this is a lot to think about. We unpacked a lot, and honestly, I didn't plan on getting into some of the other stuff, but I feel like that some of the words are wisdom that are led by God, and some of this stuff needs to be out because it's wisdom. There is a better way. There is better people to take care of these things. This shows it right here. This program has been in existence for years. I'm going to see just how long. Because I know we started giving out food assistance back in the 30s, back as the Great Depression was going on, and we were trying to figure out ways to lead ourselves out of the Great Depression. And I know that Roosevelt and Hoover and all of those people, they ran on government assistance, helping you out with a chicken in every pot and making sure that that people have been taken care of. So yeah, this food assistance program began in the early 1930s. Initially, temporary as a temporary food stamp program, which was made permanent in 1964 and officially renamed SNAP in 2008. I remember it as food stamps because growing up, we were on food stamps, and they were actual stamps that had a money amount on them, or they had a certain item that you could buy, or a certain set of items you could buy. And when you're, honestly, when my brother and my sister were being born, we were also on the WIC program, which helped mothers have milk and cheese and things of that nature, things that were approved that got you to that level, that got you the nutrition you needed. And that's why this is a supplemental nutrition program. I just lost supplemental nutrition assistance program. And that's, it now encases a lot of that. And so, this is a program that's been around almost 90 years. And, maybe it took 90 years, or maybe it took the wrong people, but now the government is using it as a weapon, as a tool to sway you to vote the right way, to blame someone, to take a side, to split yourself against other people. And it's like I said, voting wise, you need to stand up, tell them that you're not going to vote this way, that you're going to, their decisions have consequences. I tell my 3-year-old all the time, your decisions have consequences, and that those consequences, that they're either good or the bad. If you help dad out in the kitchen, you get good food. If you help clean up your toys, you don't step on stuff and break it, or dad doesn't step on your stuff and break it and have to throw it away because it's broken. Governmentally, if you vote against your people should not vote you back in. I mean, Chuck Schumer has voted against his people and has taken money from his people for years. And this isn't like just me being a Republican or whatever and saying this. There is documented proof that, he's pushed the envelope of making things more and more difficult for his people. And they still, because they recognize his voice when they go, or recognizes his name on a ballot when they go to vote for him, they still vote him right in. That's why I'm so surprised that in Ohio, in my district, Sherrod Brown got voted out. But they didn't honestly he didn't get voted out because of a better candidate. He got voted out because the person that was on the ballot against him was hand in hand with Trump. Trump voted, or when you voted for Trump, you voted Trump, then you voted this Moreno guy, Bernie Moreno, and then you voted the rest of the Republican ticket. Which, just as a sidebar, I think is amazingly naive of people to put that they're Republican or they're Democrat as a judge. Like, if you're a Republican or a Democrat as a judge, that means that you don't care. You're going to lean a certain way. And as much as I like to know what you're going to lean, I'd rather go down through your adjudications and say, okay, he's tough on crime. Okay, he's going to vote for the Constitution. Or she. And not say, okay, he's a Republican. Because at this point, I don't know what a Republican votes for. I don't know who the Republican is, in the party anymore. Because there are some of your constitutional Republicans, and there are people who are like Trump, who are more centralists, who are globalists, economists, who are really trying to build the economy and help us out in that kind of thing. But honestly, don't move the needle a ton when it comes to religious affiliations. And he's done some with abortion and stuff, but he didn't do abortion in the way that he banned abortion and Christians cheer because our country no longer has abortions. He banned abortions in a way that was not banning abortion. He sent abortion to decide by the state, which is good. You can now decide what state you're going to live in based on the abortion laws they have if you want. You now have the choice to, support a state that has bills that hold abortion to, you know, certain time frames that you believe or deem that's okay. And we can argue about what's okay and how much abortion is good and how much abortion is life saving and how it's your body and your choice and how it's obviously not the baby's body and it's not his choice or her choice or its choice in this matter. We've desensitized ourselves to it's, them, and their, and we haven't held on to, life as they are. And so I think that, judges who call themselves out as Republicans or who, the ballot now says, a affiliation, and people in general are going to have an affiliation, and that's fine. I'm not oblivious. I'm not, and I'm not here thinking that they're the, the best people in the world, or they have the most knowledge, or they have some kind of super belief system. But at the same time, they're not supposed to have not supposed to be running as a Republican or as a Democrat. So lots to learn today. Lots to be thinking about on the podcast. Who's to blame? Who gets hurt by this? And what do we do to tell our Congress people, our because this is a Congress thing. Congress sets the budget. The executive branch executes the budget, executes the plan, but Congress puts the plan together. And it's honestly all on them. President Trump has nothing to do with this. He can't add another $4.6 billion to the budget and fund it fully for a month, unless he finds it somewhere and says, okay, this part of the budget we don't need this while we're shut down, so this part goes in here. But from what I can see, that's what he's already done, is that this part doesn't need to be used, so this part we can use. So, another great podcast. Love you guys. Again, Charlie Kirk will have to wait, which I think is okay for him because he's got nothing but time now. Nothing but time with Jesus. Love you guys. Remember to follow, like, and share the Why I'm Angry podcast across all social media platforms and anywhere you